Hello, everyone, and welcome, hopefully back. But if it's the first time, also welcome for the first time to WTBI, What's the Big Idea? A talk plus show for audacious visionaries. It is Thursday, March 18th, 2021, and I'm so excited to be in conversation and co-dreaming space today with my dear friend Sage Crump. So I'm going to bring Sage on in to do a self intro and we'll get this thing kicked off. Hello, Sage.
Hi, Ron.
It's nice to see your face.
Good to see yours too.
Yeah. Well, welcome to What's the Big Idea? And knowing that folks have a description, a bio, I would say, for
hmm
you underneath the YouTube video description, what would you like to share with folks today about who you are and what you're bringing to the space?
Hmm. I First, I've been in a space this morning of writing sort of acknowledgments and gratitudes to people who have I've just had conversations with, and like people who have helped me grow my thinking, and I started that writing with the quote by Octavia Butler: "There's nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns."
Mm,
And part of that is like I feel like I'm deeply feeling the multitudes at my back, front, sides, top, and bottom that are with me and inside of and have given birth to anything that I think and share, like just um, the recognition of our interconnectedness and legacy feels really important as I talk about, like, this is what I do, right? Like, so before I get to what I do in the world, let me say that, you know.
word, word.
And a couple of years ago, a friend of mine had a practice, and she had a 3-word bio that she was like, okay, like these are the, and I was like, ooh, that's gangster, like that's like, okay, all right, let me see what I can come up with. And so I never got to 3 words. I got to sort of a 5-ish. Right? Like, so in
Word.
the world, I am a facilitator, a strategist, movement worker, a maker, and a philosopher. And that is, I don't actually use that as a bio. Like, it's like, send me a bio. I want to get to that point where I'm like, I'm just going to send these words. But when I think about how I do interact with the world and how I hold myself accountable to how I want to be in the world, this
Hmm.
is these words are where I land. I want to be a maker. I want to be able to point to something I've learned. Like, it's important for me to be able to point to something and be like, I made that, even if it's some kind of random scarf it's just one long knitting thing. Like, everyone's like, what are
Yes.
you making? I'm like, I don't know, but this one
Yes.
thing, right? Like, or if it's, facilitation and being in relationship with folks. Strategy, I think a lot about how we change the world. That's pretty much the use of culture, and how we change the world is damn near all I think about when I'm not kikiing, making friends, with my friends. And actually, and when I am kikiing with my friends, we're also thinking about it, talking about how culture changes the world. And then philosopher, like actually, as I said that, I heard KRS One in my head saying, "I think very deeply." The
Indeed.
opening line to my philosophy is KRS saying, "I think very deeply,"
Hmm.
which is just the last thing I'll share about what you should know about me is that I'm a double Aquarian, sun and rising. So thinking and knowledge, and by knowledge, I don't necessarily mean like book reading. I mean like understanding and meaning making are core to me. Like, if I don't have a sense of meaning, then that's what I'm searching for, and that's what I'm trying to offer. What does this mean? What does that mean? What does it mean? Mhm.
Yes. And I would say in that Aquarian spirit, I feel like so much of the meaning making you are doing and the knowledge that you're cultivating is very much on behalf of the collective and is, you know, global or universal in scope and scale.
Yeah. Thank you. Which is why this show you started, this I love the show plus is like perfect. Like, what's the big idea? You know, and how do we
Yes.
get into the big idea? Because sometimes the big idea feels so big, you're just like, wow. But like, really, what are the ways we can get into the big idea and begin to, you know, wrestle with it and headlock it and, you know, dance with it, all the things.
Yes, yes, indeed. And I just want to say for our collective edification that Sage was teed up to be my first co-dreamer on the show, about which we were both so excited. And then there were all these hurricanes that distracted us from being able to do that because we had no power on the date of the previous show back in October. I think it was October 29th. So, all is divine and timing is as it should be. And here we are right now when we're having this conversation. So this feels like a little bit of a full circle. And I'm so glad that we were able to make this work.
Me too. Me too.
So Sage, I would love to know, as part of our pleasure show and tell practice on What's the Big Idea, what in your environs, on your person, whatever it is on your spirit, is bringing you pleasure as we virtually gather here today.
So, in full transparency, I am both a guest here today and a fan. So I've watched actually a few episodes now, and like, ooh. So I thought about this. I knew this was coming, and I thought about this. And so, first is this: when I'm putting on my body during the pandemic, when like lockdown was during the pandemic, like early on in there's a Black woman designer named Whitney Mira. Her company's called The Onion. And she started doing these Instagram sales. Now, mind you, we were in the house, like there's nowhere to go. But I love her work. And so I, through her, I started making a shift in my wardrobe to trying to have everything I own be designed by Black women, like, or Black women-owned companies. Word. So I've been shifting my wardrobe, but Whitney has been the core of it. And she does these really kind of drapey, tailored, super comfy yet chic pieces. And she's a relatively, I don't know if I would say, I think she would, a relatively small operation, like, right? So she was also kind of overwhelmed with like responses, and she would say like, "I'm coming, don't." And so I got this sweater dress, I think Saturday, and it was like 85 degrees here in New Orleans, and I was like, "Well, I'm gonna put that away for next year," you know. But today it was cool, and our temperatures had dropped, and I was like, ooh. So first, I'm going to take the tags off this and put it on. And rock my Whitney Miro sweater dress in coral. So I'm super excited about that. Indeed. I made you can't really tell it is a fruit smoothie. It's but it also has live greens and protein powder, and just I love the combinations of like fruits and smoothies and vegetables and things like that. Always great to get your vegetables. I've been very much into scents. I mean, and so I have a little Florida water next to me just to ground, put it in my hands and tap it around. So I feel like if I walk by someone who's familiar with Florida water, I feel like I'm just grounding everyone. Like, here it is, you know?
Yes.
And a little bit of smoke just to clear. A little smoke just to clear. So my pleasure. Oh, and my new favorite lip color.
Yes, indeed. I saw it. I was about to say, is the lip a part of this? Or is it just an everyday pleasure that needs no mention? This
is a lip. In the first series of Professional Black Girl, Yaba Blay, Dr. Yaba Blay does an episode where she talks about when I cut my hair, I start focusing on my lip. Like, you know, and I was like, ooh. And so I just kind of followed that a little bit. And that was like when I cut my hair, I was like, oh, I need to up my lipstick game. And so this is my new favorite. And lastly, these earrings were given to me by my love. And they are
Beautiful.
elephants. If you can see.
Yes, I
And elephants
see.
are really important to me uh, um, in the last year or so, just around like memory, community, care, and also don't mess. Like elephants have a good balance of like, yes, we care for Aaron. Don't come for us if we don't send for you.
Yes, indeed.
Mixture in the mix. So, mhm.
Thank you. I love witnessing my people love on themselves. It's a very beautiful thing to have people share the ways that they are nourishing and caring for themselves and giving them pleasure. I find this deeply satisfying. So thank you for leaning in and for planning and executing accordingly. This is lovely. On my part, I am drinking a really lovely herbal blend of tea from a mug that says Dreamer on it appropriately. I inherited this from my former roommate, Ashley Teamer, also known as DJ Dreamer.
DJ Dreamer.
And this tea is really good. It's like holy basil and rose petals and milky oats and some other lovely, soothing, calming, nervous system, stabilizing things,
Love.
herbs. So grateful for this tea and the mug in which it sits. I have a bunch of new plants. They are currently sitting on the ground over there, but they are happily now under my stewardship, I hope, and I'm very excited to find spaces for them in the house where they're feeling good and happy. And lastly, I have on a t-shirt. I think I've now worn at least 2 t-shirts by this artist Kendrick Day, but this one is particularly exciting to me and says, "Black men loving Black men is a revolutionary act." And I really love it. And it's also got the ransom lettering on the back.
Ashay.
So yeah, I'm feeling into that and coming out of some time working on my solo show about Black men and tenderness, which you had the like I said privilege. Maybe it was a privilege to see it. I don't know.
It was
Feel presumptuous
absolutely a
of me.
privilege and an honor. It was. You can say that.
Come on, Ron. Okay, you're feeling yourself
Mhm.
today. All right.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I've been in that space and I feel affirmed. Oh, and I painted my nails after a really long time
Ooh.
doing that.
Oh,
Super
that's
relaxing.
glittery. Yes.
So that's me. That's me with pleasure today. Thank you. Thank you for listening and for sharing.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna move into another sharing portion of today's show. The venting, purge, getting things off our chest, airing of grievances portion. And as a reminder or grounding for those of you who may or may not have tuned in the past, the way this works is that Sage and myself will each have 2 minutes to say whatever we need to say and release whatever we need to release in order to be present and make space for the dreaming work that we're going to do together. I invite you to also do this during or after our time together. I find that releasing whatever is on top for us that might be blocking our ability to do the channeling and for me conjure work of dreaming and visioning is an important step. It's a necessary precondition to me to create the space. So we'll each take 2 minutes. Sage will go first. After Sage is done and when the timer goes off, we'll do 3 breaths together to continue to release, focusing on that exhale. And then I'll go for 2 minutes and we'll do the same. And then we'll get into the dreaming. Does that sound all right with you?
Yeah, it's a woo, yeah. 2 minutes?
Listen, it's just, I encourage a little filter as people feel comfortable engaging and trusting that all is divine. So just let me know when you're ready for me to start the timer and I'll start it.
Yeah, you can start the timer.
Here we go.
Fuck white supremacy and all of the ways it shapes us. Fuck it. Like, I am so, we're recording this after the murders of the Asian women in Asian women who are sex workers in Atlanta. We are in the midst of a rash, and I saw earlier today, and I actually think I might have pulled that from your Instagram. It's like white supremacy promises nothing except none of us are safe, right? Like, and the mix of ways in which we're watching like media, like everyone's like this one phrase where the cop's like, "Dude had a bad day." It's like had a bad day. What little value of life do you have that you could characterize the murder of 8 people, the mass murder of 8 people, as someone having a bad day? And that's just like the headline of it, right? Because what my vent is about, what that means about how we treat each other. And how we care about each other. Like, this is not, whether it's a white man with an automatic rifle, or it's in our most intimate relationships, or it's I was watching Tamir Rice's mother, is having some feelings about, having some very clear feelings. I'm being euphemistic because I didn't read that much, but about Black Lives Matter, like all these things, just the way in which it shapes us to believe that we are nothing, not only to ourselves but to each other. Like, is my vent today, and has me tender and angry and dreaming.
Word. Thank you. Let's breathe. All right, finding ourselves connected to the earth in a way that feels good. We're gonna breathe in together the truth of what you've shared. We're gonna release what needs continued releasing from that truth. Breathing in together a second time. And releasing. Softening, feeling the support of the earth. One last inhale. Gratitude for the truth. And releasing. Being present. Thank you, Sage.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to set the timer for myself. Here we go. This always feels like story circle time to me, because I might have something that I'm like, oh, I'm probably going to vent about that. And then whoever goes first is, as co-dreamer, there's usually something that triggers. But in the realm of white supremacy and how it affects the way we treat and value ourselves and each other, I really like Sonia Renee Taylor's white supremacist delusion as the articulation of what this is. And yes, it is real and present. And it's awards season. And I have a whole thing about awards and awards season, particularly when those awards come from white supremacist institutions, and how we, as people who have not been acknowledged by these white supremacist, sexist, patriarchal, colonial institutions, fight to be recognized by those same institutions and celebrate it when we are. And I want to honor, in the case of something like a Grammy, the importance of acknowledgement for pragmatic purposes, for the purposes of surviving capitalism as artists who, let's say, make music, and for whom that stamp of approval and or brand of approval, if we want to pull in some relevant enslavement metaphors, is an important part of being able to earn money and unlock other opportunities to earn money and therefore be able to make one's art. At the same time, I'm like, y'all, we need to go beyond and look under the covers of that a little bit more and understand why it's important for us to be validated by these institutions beyond the pragmatics of surviving capitalism as artists. Because there's some deep shit in there around, I think, people of color, women, trans folks wanting to be seen and valued by white men and their institutions. And that's fucked up. And I have no tolerance for it. I want to write about that one day. Okay.
And I have the image that came to mind. Just I know vent time is over. I heard that, but
Okay.
it just particularly in relationship to what you said around like people being able to survive and like what these awards do. There's an image on floating around the nets of Blue Ivy drinking, I don't know, whatever, out of her Grammy, like with a straw, like treating the Grammy like it's a juice box, and there's something about that I am interested in what that's teaching her as a young person. Um, and also recognizing we're talking about Blue Ivy Carter, right? Like there are all these things are like all these things. Like,
that is very complex to me.
it is very complex.
Yeah, that's like a whole dissertation chapter at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's breathe. Let's close this thing out. All right, so inhaling the truth and exhaling anything that would be a barrier to it. Inhaling gratitude for the truth and exhaling to release and ground. Inhaling and softening. All right.
I really hope
Thank you,
people
Sage.
are breathing with us.
Yes, the radical act of Black people breathing together in public.
Yeah.
Always satisfying to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sage, I will start out this segment the way I start out this segment for every show, which is with the question, what are you dreaming about and visioning for our collective future today?
Today, I am dreaming about time. I'm dreaming about the elasticity of time and its nature as a construct and how we use time or can use time both individually and as a species to move towards life, to feel to create a more aliveness inside our understanding of change and transformation. Like I think part of the struggle around like change and like folks needing like change is bad is like I don't have time to navigate the change or all the things that are coming while you're in the midst of transformation. So we push it away, right? Like I have time enough to like I got 24 hours in a day. I know that this other stuff coming in. Nobody has time to think about that, right? Like nobody has time. I'm trying to, move forward. And so I think this just, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about time, and my friend Wes Taylor and I were working this idea of like time spirals and like what does it look like to be both in the present moment and in the interstitial spaces between the present and the future and the present and the past, and all that we can learn by putting these things in connection to each other, and like you said, breathe, right? Like the thing around time is everything in your body tightens up when you think you don't have enough time. Everything you're like, I'm rushing, like rush. Everything in your body tightens up. It's really hard to rush, think you don't have enough time, and deeply breathe at the same time. And so, the calendar, the way time functions, and even when I say time, I think a lot about even the ways in which we approach time now, like why we have weekends and the 8 hour, like these things are things that people fought for, right? Like, so I'm
Yeah.
not saying like but there isn't. What is the iteration now, and what is possible around that iteration, especially given in what we know about time and pace and all the things we have learned in the last 12 months, because we're also having this conversation right on the eve of the beginning of shut it down and stay at home and stay, and who had the availability for that, and like, so yeah, I'm dreaming about a time that feels expansive and generative and um, can hold all of the ways we need to be in the world. And I do mean all. Like a friend of mine, Lisa, was teaching me yesterday that it was the day of Sekhmet. And Sekhmet is a goddess
Mm-hmm.
with 100 names. And that some of her name, like her name, like, I don't have it in front of me, but some of them are like, the joys, and also like the destroyer, right? And um, so when I'm talking about time, I'm reminding myself that what I'm craving, what I'm dreaming, is time to be able to live in all of the multitudes and have choice about where and how I want to be at any given moment, right? Mm. That's what I'm thinking
I love talking about time,
about.
and its infinite malleability and rootedness in human perception,
Mhm.
and its alinearity. And I also think for folks who may not consider these things or ponder them all the time, all the time, like that this can feel like a super like abstract and like what are we even talking about? So I'm curious, Sage, if you have some examples that you can conjure up
Mhm.
of where you experience that sense of time that is elastic, that sense of time that is expansive, or that sense of time that is the spiral. I'm just curious if you could illuminate some of that for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, I appreciate this question, because I think part of um, what talking about time um, requires is ensuring that we're, for me, ensuring that as I talk about time, I'm also talking about it in relationship to material conditions, and how
Mm.
we live, and how we are able to live and provide for ourselves, our loved ones, and community. Which is why, even when I talk about time, it is never lost on me that folks really fought for 2 days off, right?
Yeah.
Like, our ancestors in enslavement, right? Like, uh, um, were did not have access to uh, um, their own bodies in a way that they could manage time, right? Like somebody else was like, you will do this now, you'll do that now. And they found like spaces in between. Like, again, I think a lot about the interstitial spaces. Like there's so when I'm talking about time, for me, finding places, the ways I'm working with it in my own experiences, um, when am I shutting down things that I'm in the middle of? Like, 6 or 7 months ago, I started this practice of I shut down quote unquote work for myself at like 6:37 to make dinner.
Mm.
Um, and and I said that because it's funny. I was watching A little social media. I feel like I'm talking about social media a lot right now, but hey, it's part of the world we live in and part of our observations. And there was one where this person was kind of having a temper tantrum, and the the typeface was, when you've left your 9 to 5 to be an entrepreneur and work from 9 to 3 a.m. You
Mm,
know,
mm-hmm.
and then we're talking about like the complexities in that, right? Like, what does it mean to uh, um, be able to claim like I am in control of my time, of myself. No one else is telling me what to do. But in order to access what I need to survive, then instead of 9 to 5, I'm now at like 9 to 3 a.m. Right? Like, so so my stopping to make dinner has consequences. It absolutely does. It's consequences, not just for me, but for people around me, and I have to be in conversation and negotiation and understand that when I talk about the ways in which time is shifting in my life, because I think there's also this uh, uh, sort of untethered way I can sometimes lean and be like, I'm just going to be like, as if the way I approach time isn't interconnected to other people that I'm engaged in or connected in relationship with, right? Um, but yeah, that's one way that has really, and I love what I do. So there's part of it that's like, I really could think and talk about these conversations all day, uh, um, and what I have learned is that I have access to so much more in my body, so much more ancestral wisdom, um, when I am thoughtful about ensuring there's time in my life for uh, good food, making good food for myself, or calling. I'm the worst at phone calls. I'm just so, and I actually, let me rephrase that. I have let racialized capitalism tell me that, what am I doing with my time? I have so much to do. It's time to make a phone call, right? And I am deprogramming myself from that, right? Like, so what does it
Mm,
mean to lay on the couch and call my bestie and have, an hour long? That's not an hour lost. That is an hour of love. That is an hour of
mm,
laughter. That is an hour that uh, has such value, um, as much as an hour it would take to meet a deadline, right? Like, I'm really trying to navigate these again, relationships, and understanding what it means from how I can be in the world.
mm-hmm.
And I think part of what I love about this question is, um, in the midst of these big ideas, um, our practice spaces often our most intimate spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we test things, right? Like, and so, you asking me the follow-up question helps me really present to um, how conceptually, back to the study of like how conceptually, and I think about time as a construct that is actually living in my body in my everyday moments. And I also think we can do the opposite as well, right? Like, that we, in our lived experience, in our everyday moments, our ability to tune into our soma, like what are we feeling, what is making us how are we deciding what our shoulds are or have tos, um,
Mm.
lend our lived brilliance to how we transform the world and like where we need to make shifts.
Okay. I've been taking so many notes while you talk. That's why I keep looking down and around, because I'm like finding things in my brain that you're
Mhm.
like lighting up and trying to document them. So I am just like the litany of saying time multiple times
Mhm.
is bringing up just a lot of associations for me. So I think about like in practice, and I think about in the practice of Black life too, and thinking, I've been describing some of the thematic through lines of this, the conversations that I've had as a part of this show. One of those through lines is around everyday futurisms. And part of what's coming to me, because that's about how we mess with time to me, or how we understand ourselves and our actions in the context of time. And just want to be like very like, where is this tangible in life to practice projecting oneself into the future, right? And how do Black folks do that all the time? So I'm thinking, as you were talking about, what are the ways in which we use time, see it as malleable, not as this imposition, but as this thing that we can fuck with, right? And so some of the things that you were saying ancestrally, like I think about how my enslaved ancestors and enslaved African people in the context of the Americas would slow down their labor process, slow down the rhythm of a song, for example, as a way of creating more ease and a shared sense of owning and or using time that was also about labor and also about energy and also about feeling of connection inside of the confines of a very extractive and abusive and violent labor system, right? But that is a tangible way. You slow down the song that is governing, that is creating the flow of the labor, and we collectively ease back into time, even if for a moment, even if for a verse, even if for a round. I think about Maxine Waters and reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time as this meme that began, right? As this memeified language, but as a real recognition that I feel like women, Black folks, femmes, people inside of institutional spaces, people who are institutionalized in various ways, et cetera, right? That there was such resonance with that statement, reclaiming my time, right? Like it is a thing that I can take. It is not this thing that's just moving without my, it's not this constant that's just flowing around me and that I'm in the flow of. It's something I can take, put somewhere, and have and utilize as needed, right? And it is something that everyone can then experience and acknowledge.
Yeah.
As a Black elder, Maxine Waters said, no, I'm reclaiming my time.
My time.
I'm thinking about keeping time as a musician. And again, like extending, like being in the pocket, right? Part of that is we have this singular, unique, and very in this moment relationship to time and what we're all doing in time. When I'm in an ensemble, a combo, and we are just in that pocket together, we are screwing with time. I think about the Black church, and I think about my particular love of metered hymns and the work of the Spiritual Technologies Project. And part of what I love so much about aligned hymn and so much about the long meter in particular, this extension of every syllable for as long as the collective breath can hold it, which can be 15 minutes of singing 1 minute long notes. It really destabilizes a relationship to linear time. It feels like forever inside of those songs. And as a kid, that can be very agonizing. Even as an adult, perhaps, if you're not really into that music. And it is this space of release and processing and collective and communal purging that is occurring in a time space that gets fully warped when we're all resonating in that way together. And so I think about the malleability of time in these very tangible, like, or actionable ways, like the space of prayer, the space of orgasm, the space of that conversation with someone that you love that stretches on for 4 hours, and where did the time go? These are all experiences of the malleability, the elasticity, the expansiveness, the not just what the clock says it is time. And I think that leaning into those experiences that we have of time that is fluid is just so important to remember that 40 and industrialized clock time, colonial train schedule clock time is not the only time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's beautiful, and I love the examples in their relationship to like church and music, in particular, because I think there's what you've got me thinking about is time time is almost always in relationship to what we need, right? Like what's happened, like what is the amount of time for something to happen. And it's funny when you first asked the question, immediately the first thing that came into my spirit was the family reunion and doing the wobble, right? Like there's a way in which like so many songs now that, a lot of music is and not surprised that you and I wound up in a conversation about music, is like 3 minutes and 47 seconds or like 4 minutes, right? You could never do the electric slide or the wobble in 4 minutes. People got to put down pans. They got to drop their purses. They got to wrap up conversations to get to the floor in order to all be able to be in collective wobble together. Right? Like
collective wobble.
Yeah. So this song needs to be 7 to 10 minutes. Like it can't be 2 minutes, right? Like it needs that space. And like, and I think that the metered hymns, which is also I love not this same sort of study, but just love church and time, and I think that is such a beautiful example of the place where time is self-determined in a lot of ways. Like let me not say self, collectively determined, right? Collectively determined. You know, folks could walk out, but they don't, right? Like, so there's a way in which, even again, back to this idea of like how I might do it in an intimate, personal way. Like we are always in relationship to each other, right? Like, so in the malleability of time, can have its full expression when we are surfing it together towards that which we all need. Right? Like,
Word.
Yeah. I've been to 20-minute churches. It don't do it for me. I'm just saying. I need a little time.
I don't even know what that means.
Oh no, I literally have been to like their church in Atlanta is like 30 minutes. It is literally, and it's almost like a timer. Like it's wild. Yeah. And I will say it's Black folk, but it's interesting, it is a collective decision, right? Like, and they have made a decision about what they feel like they need out of this collective experience enough to go, right? Like, do you just need an amuse-bouche? Some of us, need 5 courses. What do what do you need? What do you need to feel satisfied? Right? Like,
yeah. I think ritual time is a really important kind of time. To me, it is one of those spaces of timeless experience where we experience the suspension of our conscious experience of time, at least. And any sort of like space of trance or out of body experiences, or just experiences of timelessness. There's this really beautiful poem writing by John Berger, the poet. I believe that's how he said his name, and it's called, I think, like On the Economy of the Dead. It's a really wonderful piece that talks about timelessness as this space of liminality between the experiences of the living and the dead. I
Mm.
believe it's great. I can post that in the link. That is one of the essential reads. I probably read it 4 or 5 times a year.
Mm.
But yes, ritual time, and making space for ritual time, which just is like, what is a clock? You go to a church and be like, how long is service?
Mm.
Till it's done. What time does service usually end? I don't know, around 1 or 3.
What you're excited, getting me really excited about is also, I, again, going back to like lived experience and how that then helps us understand conceptually what something is. The spaces in which, like, we're talking about, like, ritual and spiritual spaces. And earlier you mentioned the timelessness of orgasm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, what does that mean about how we name our lovemaking, right? Like, how do we understand that as ritual, as spiritual, as, you know, whether it's 30 minutes or whether it's 4 hours, you know, like, it is a negotiation of mutual satisfaction of a collective that is engaged in something, right? Like, so I'm really digging, like, the now that I'm thinking about um, this offering that you've given me to think about the ritual and the spiritual nature of all the places I experience timelessness.
Mm. Mm.
So it's like, if you want to figure out what's ritual in your life, think about how it feels around time to you. Like, and that might be some breadcrumbs.
Hmm.
Think about.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I think this ties back to another episode with Ebony Noel Golden, and talking about the practice of everyday ritual, and
Mm.
talking about making space, particularly in one's. I really felt like we were very much talking about home space, domestic space, living space as ritual space.
Mhm.
And like, when in our days, to your question that you're sitting with, which I will also sit with,
Mhm.
when do we have space for timelessness and
Mhm.
not being on time, or even being in time, or out of time, or having time, but where do we make space for timelessness
Mhm.
and the experience of timelessness?
Yeah.
um, I need to do some accounting.
I know. Brilliant, brilliant, beautiful being, Ebony. Like, I'm now thinking about Saturday mornings when you put on some music and you start doing some cleaning, you know?
Mm,
Like, hmm, what does that mean
mm,
about how I think about the tending of home? To
mm-hmm.
something Muti talks a lot about, my partner talks a lot about, the tending of home, you know, like,
Yeah.
and how that is ritual. Mhm.
Yes. Yes. I also, the other thing that's coming to me in terms of thinking about time and malleability of time, I know both you and I do facilitation work. We
Mhm.
do work inside of organizational structures with people who are articulating some shared goal and want to get to a place, want to do a thing, want to make a thing manifest. And part of my practice within the last, I would say the last 5 years, but it's intensifying, is calling the question, why is this the timeline?
Mhm.
And like, when does this actually need to get done?
Mhm.
And why? And if ever I feel like we are rushing, I will be like, I feel like we are rushing. Why are we rushing? And to just slow down. And
Mhm.
my question now is not how quickly can we get this done, but is, what is the maximum amount of time we could use? How slow can we move on
Mm.
this? As opposed to how quickly can we get this done? How slowly can we do this?
Ashe.
And starting there, that's actually the question. Because I feel with so much values-based work, work for change, work for liberation, there's real urgency, particularly when that work is, I'll just say there's real urgency. There's all kinds of urgency.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
violence happening all the time.
Yeah.
And we know, many of us know. Actually, I feel like all of us know that when we rush, we leave behind certain principles, values, and ways that we want to work.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be with our intimate partners,
Yeah.
and our orgasms, or whether that be, that's why I don't like to rush any sort of sexual intimacy. I need spaciousness around that. I don't do like, it's never satisfying for me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be timeless inside of that space, right? And I feel like part of what the space of ritual and or the space of slowdown and or the space of being out of time enables is an ability to be integrated in our actions.
Yes.
Small or large, individual or collective. And that for me is increasingly non-negotiable. And I'm just like, I don't rush. It's a spiritual taboo for me to rush. I'm quite convinced.
Yes.
So I just don't do it. I will literally like rush and fall down the stairs if I'm trying to like run around my house. Like it's literally like, don't do it, Ron. Just don't do it in any form or fashion. And I think that collectively we are stumbling all over the place because we rush so much when we don't need to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I question every timeline that comes in my way for a project. I'm like, why are we doing this in 12 months? Can we do it in 18 months? Can we do it in 24 months? Why not?
Why not?
And for real talk, when it's in the nonprofit sector, it's usually because a philanthropic grant making institution told you. That's why. And that's bullshit. And that's another show. But yeah. So how slowly can we move? How slow can we move is for me an important time fuckwithing question.
That's such a good question. That's such a good question. Because part of what I want to lay into that is, you know, what do we need to know, do, or be in order to get to the thing, right? Like part of it is like, let's just produce it, and make it happen. And what we know, what movement history tells us, what all kinds of, what we know in our bodies is when you talk about what gets left behind, I feel like what often gets left behind is how we grow as human beings. Like what do we need? We could have, if you could, tear down the state tomorrow. What do we have? What do we have inside us? What do we need to grow to be able to be in right relationship with each other, right? And I'm not saying that as a way to say the state is necessary, because I absolutely don't believe that in any way, shape, or form. But I do believe in this space of dreaming and growing and manifesting. Like there's a generation of who we need to be as humans, like whether it is both, whether it is both the like deprogramming, decolonization, and simultaneously our expansion, the expansion of our humanity. And I love, there's a writing in particular, a book that I've been going back to is this book called Conversations in Maine. And it is Jimmy and Grace Lee Boggs in conversation with their friends, Freddy and Lyman Paine. And it's very much like, I feel like what we're doing right now is very much in this lineage, right? Like where they're like, we got together every year and we would talk.
Yeah.
And that's where things are born and grow. And
yes.
I love that they knew that then, and we are relearning that, like this space of conversation and transformation of the world, even in the midst of the earth. Like they're in the midst of, they're in the 60s and 70s, like they're in the level of urgency, but the time to talk to each other and to pull things out. But one of the things that Jimmy particularly talks about is the creation of a new man, like we're talking sex is still new man, or the framing that Grace would talk about dialectical humanism, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do we make space for our transformation as humans and as humanity, and the
Yes.
iteration of that as we're moving forward. And when you're moving fast,
Mm-hmm.
hard to remember to build multiple spaces for existence, for different types of existence. It's hard to think about the divinity of 100 names when you're moving that fast. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you. A whole show about time. Okay. This is really
Yeah.
we are demonstrating
Yeah.
in this conversation what we're talking about.
How
And I
deep
love
can you
that.
go?
An hour goes by so quickly. I gotta say, I'm on some like understanding that in internet time, it's already a lot for a show to be an hour. Most people don't stick around to watch the whole thing because we are jumping between stuff and we rush from one thing to another.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that each of these conversations could easily be 3 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we just need to have like a live, what's the big idea? It's like a 24-hour conversation that people can just drop in on whenever, and it's just going to keep going. And
Chart me for the 3:30 to 5:30 a.m. slot. Like, I'm so there.
it's like the watch night service version of what's the big idea. I don't know.
I love it.
Maybe it's a Juneteenth thing. I'm
Mhm.
not sure.
And I love, because at the core of that, it's like, um, give it what it needs and let people find their way into it however they need to.
Yeah.
I think that,
See
yeah.
what happens when you take the time.
I'm deeply into the experience of, like, I don't know how folks are going to, partly because I am the person who will, like, folks are like, no one's going to sit and watch that whole thing. And I'm always in the back of the room like, I would.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's not a read on anybody who, dips in for a little bit or not. It's more a reflection of our collective like inculcation around time, and also like the realities that time feels scarce because of the way that it is structured and the way we've collectively agreed to practice it.
So
So
it's like,
ain't no shade.
yeah, it's like, if it feels scarce, then how do we create things that folks can engage in whatever way feels good?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, dear Sage, I'm grateful for you. And I know, huh?
Is it an hour already?
I know. That's why. Yeah, exactly. We're almost at time.
Oh, so we were in ritual. We were in the timelessness nature of ritual. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's a good thing there is a clock on this, because otherwise we just keep going. But I want to, in the realm of gratitude, make sure that we let folks know where they can share monetary expressions of gratitude during or for this show, as relates to the show. So I know you've shared a particular cause that you'd like folks to direct things to. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there anything you would like to share about this opportunity?
Oh, so I so I'm a big nerd, and one of the things that I have a group of friends, and we get together and we talk about kind of culture and movement history, and I have been really present towards an internationalist perspective on the world. It's really grown me in the last 5 years. And so when I thought about that, like, first of all, it's always hard. There's so many amazing things, but I wanted to be able to support um, uh, something globally, something that wasn't US based, just as a way to presence myself and whoever is going to provide support to the uh, um, to an internationalist need. Like, what is our interconnectedness in this moment, right? It's culturally, if we're queer and trans folks in Kenya, Wende Kidwiwa is an amazing New Orleans-based artist and spoken word artist. So I'm really, I want to, yeah, this is, when the question came, I was like, yeah, okay.
Word. Thank you. Thank you for returning us to where we began, which is your global, international, expansive scale of thinking. So the information is available here. You can donate Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal. And we hope that you can continue to direct funds to support queer and trans folks in Kenya, who I'm sure still need ongoing relief in many, many ways.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sage. Everyone, it has been a pleasure. For those who are joining us in real time, thank you. For those who are watching the recording, thank you so much. My final What's the Big Idea for this season is in 2 weeks on April 1st with a wonderful, I don't even know how to describe Sophie, but also a person who couldn't make a previous show and is now coming back to wrap it all up, doing some really radical history work around history of whiteness and anarchism. I'm just so into this line of thinking and doing and being that Sophie's engaged in. So I'm so excited to be in conversation and co-dreaming with Sophie in a few weeks. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, big ideas for What's the Big Ideas future are coming. And who knows, this 24-hour situation, maybe that could be dope. But there's definitely going to be a second season dropping in the fall. So stay tuned and stay dreaming. Peace and blessings to everybody.
Thank you so much for the space that you're holding and for the space that you allow us into.
Yeah. All right. Peace, y'all.
Yeah.